So this is not the G7 Pro. This is the PBTL's Crush Defender, one of my favorite Xbox layout controllers, and also the world's first TMR stick controller to hit the market. Now, I'm bringing this up before I go on to the G7 Pro, which is right here, because this controller, PBTLs did a lot right with this. They got the stick processing perfect, like right out of the box. There's no filtering, there's no processing or anything like that on it at all. It was just really high performing straight away. Thousands of resolution points on the sticks, 1000 hertz via an update that came later. And whilst it doesn't have optical mechanical switches or mouse clicky mechanical switches for the ABXY or D-pad, these are just membrane, but they are tactile at the same time. They're still very good. They haven't failed me yet. They haven't become sticky, and I've had this since launch as well before launch actually, and yeah, it's been perfectly fine. It looks cool, and it does the job. It doesn't have trigger lockouts or anything like that, so it is fairly bare bones in terms of what you can do, customization and so on. But as I say, it did the job, and it was really good at doing that job. So this has a special place in my mind, and it's a special edition as well, so it's always going to be in my collection. So let's go on to the G7 Pro and talk about its pros and cons, because there are some cons as well, but there are a lot of pros, so it kind of makes up for it. Just want to show you the detailing at first, the front and the back, and just take a look at the detailing. There's nothing glossy on this at all. Well, actually there is. I'll show you that in a moment when I take the fascia off, but it's very matte. This underside here, this is all rubberized, and the grip is just insanely good. So I like this. This is much nicer silicone or rubber than what I found on other controllers from EasySMX, Mobipad, and even some previous GameSir controllers. So they've obviously refined this process, or whoever they're using to manufacture these grips have upped their game. A little bit of detailing on the triggers and things. These are translucent plastic triggers, and these look really cool. There's no RGB behind them, so there's nothing to see in terms of lighting. They feel really good, and they fit at least my medium size. I've got 19 centimeter palms or hands, and these fit perfectly. There's no issues with that at all. The trigger locks are easy to actuate, and they make a satisfying click. So these are mechanical switches all round pretty much. And if I just undo the lock, and here's what it sounds like when just actuating normally in analog trigger mode. So very silent, very good. There are some additional buttons as well, which I'll cover in a moment, but here's what the bumpers sound like. These are tactile. They're not mechanical switches, but they are tactile. The additional bumper switches, these are mechanical. So these sound like and feel like mouse clicky buttons. So these are proper mechanical. And here's what they look like up close. So again, translucent, looks pretty cool. Again, no RGB. The triggers, I forgot to mention as well, these do have vibration motors inside. So there are 4 motors here. Large one, small one, and 2 trigger motors as well. Now these will only activate in default mode if the game supports them. Otherwise you can go into the GameSir Nexus software and synchronize these motors with the grip motors. So whenever these are activated in a game, these will activate as well. Now I'm not a fan of the trigger motors because they're a bit buzzy. They sound like angry bees. So I've just got it on default. If a game supports it, great. If not, then I'm not gonna lose sleep over not having them. But yeah, so those are the trigger motors. This little thing here, at first I wasn't too sure. I had to post on Reddit, and someone pointed out that this recess, because previous GameSir controllers, I've got the GameSir Tarantula Pro. It's not in this room at the moment, so I can't grab it easily, but that has a fixed recess, so you can only put cables in there that are of a certain diameter on the jack. And that was really annoying because GameSir have done that before, and there's nothing worse than having to fish around for the correct cable. The cable that comes with it, it's actually tucked away or routed all behind my desk, so I can't really grab that out, but that's a 3 meter cable. It's really good. and it's kind of geared for console usage on the Xbox, which is why it's so long. But I've got it routed in to the stand, and the stand is actually really good. So if I just place it on there quickly, just so you can see what that's like. And it does light up, and that lighting pulses continuously until the battery is fully charged, and then the light goes off. So it's only annoying for the amount of time it takes to charge it, which is a few hours. But if you constantly leave it on the charging dock anyway, then it should always be charged, and the lighting is not going to be too much of a distraction. But there's no way to turn that off if you did want to turn that off, and it's not RGB either, it's just always white. So just worth keeping that in mind. We do have a 3.5mm headphone jack with a mute button for the microphone. So if your headset does have a mic, then you can use that. And this button here is just the pairing button for the wireless connection. You do also get in the box some D-pads. So you've got a cross shape and you've got a shaped circular one as well. I'm not too much of a fan. Normally I prefer the cross shapes, but this time around I'm not a fan of these. This one, the circular shaped one, just feels a bit odd from time to time. It sort of digs into the thumb. And this one, I will take the fascia off just so I can show you what it's like. So this is magnetic. It's really easy to take off. Just grab it by the top and pull it off. And that is it. The anti-friction rings are attached to the fascia as well. And it's lightweight plastic. There's no sort of metal or anything like that. But again, matte. Doesn't reflect any light or anything like that. The only glossy part is this translucent area here, which does look really cool actually. I kind of like that. You can have a look at the MagRes TMR sensors from GameSir. And it's nice that you can see through all of that. You just get to see some nice PCB and so on. GameSir obviously tried that with the Cyclone series of the past, and that works quite well, but I wasn't too much a fan of those either because of the extremely glossy exterior, which then had micro scratches and things over time, fingerprints and so on. But this is much better of a compromise. So to change the D-pad, you just grab it by the top and bottom and pull it out, and then that reveals how it attaches on. There's only one way these D-pads can go on as well, so there's a little notch that you have to feel for, and then that will just go on. So if I just stick that on, that's on. And the reason why I don't like the cross one is, I'll put the D-pad, the stick on afterwards. You can see there, it's leaving it kind of exposed. So there's no sort of surround, it's just leaving the clear on the underside. So yeah, I wasn't too much of a fan of that. And I actually kind of like the circular one a whole lot more. So I just leave that on full time. Let's just go grab that and stick that back on. And there's no clicky or anything like that. It just goes straight on and that's it. And I have to say, the feel of the controller, how rigid it is, how sturdy, it's really good. It doesn't feel like, and it doesn't look like that this fascia comes off. It just feels like one slab of controller. These buttons here, these just lock out the paddle buttons on the underside. I'm not sure why you'd want to use those anyway, those switches, toggles I mean, but they're there for those who don't want to or who accidentally actuate them. So I have these mapped. You can map all of these buttons to anything, including keyboard buttons as well for PC users. But I have these mapped to the shoulder buttons because sometimes I'm too busy with my fingers on the trigger and I don't game like this. I game like this. So I'm switching between trigger and bumper. So I like to have the bumpers also remapped left and right to these underside paddles, so I can actuate the bumpers with my index finger, middle fingers. So that's just how I like to do it. You might like to do it a different way, but for me that seems to have worked. And the circular D-pad as well. As I said, I'm normally not a fan of circular D-pads, but this feels and sounds great. Have a listen. There is also a bit of play in it, so I don't know if you can see that in the video, but just wiggling it around like that without pressing anything, there is a bit of play which can be a bit unnerving at first, but I've gotten used to it. It's not a problem. The silicone is very good quality, and both sticks, they circle very smoothly as well. All of the face buttons are mechanical, so take a listen to those. And I've obviously shown these buttons as well. The only buttons which are tactile, membraney style are the underside paddles and the main bumper L&R buttons. Everything else mechanical or proper clicky. So the ABXY buttons on this are optical mechanical switches. The D-pad are just mechanical switches, and they do have a hollow kind of tinny sound to them. I don't know if that's obvious to the mic. Let me just bring the controller closer so you can have a listen. So it's that metallic kind of tinniness noise, which I don't mind. It's fairly silent. It's not a loud controller compared to other mechanical switch controllers that I've used before. And I forgot to mention as well, this recess, it isn't fixed. You can just pull it off. So it's just pushing it up and then pulling it out, and that reveals a normal depth USB-C port. And these sockets here, these are for phone holders or tablet holders or whatever. It's a separate thing that you can buy. EasySMX's one does fit on here because they use the same mounting system, so third-party ones will work if GameSir don't have one yet. I don't think they did last time I checked, but yeah, those third-party ones work on there perfectly fine. And some of my anchor cables and UGream USB-C cables work with this recess already installed on there, so that's cool. Some of my other cables don't have, so still need to fish around if you want to keep that on there. Otherwise, just pull it off and use your USB as you see fit. So I've already done some measurements, and I just want to pull those up just to show and talk about those. And I did compare to the GameSir Tarantula Pro, which I had earlier as well. As I say, it's not in the room at the moment, so I can't go grab that, but I can certainly show you what I found. So this one is the GameSir Tarantula Pro. So this is a test I like to do called the bounce back test. Just pull the stick and then let go and see on any measurement software. So this is joystick tester, but you can use gamepadtester.com. Anything basically shows you the stick position, and record a slow motion video of the stick doing that at 240 FPS, then slow it down, and then just take a look at how far it bounces back and how quickly it bounces back as well. So make a mental memory note of that, because this is going to be important in a moment once I pull up the G7 Pro's one. So this is the Tarantula Pro that I'm showing at the moment, set to 1000 Hertz and connected by wireless with a dead zone set to 5%. And so both controllers have been set up the exact same way. So if I close that down and show you the G7 Pro now, and just take a note of how much more linear that bounce back is. There's no overshoot, so it's not going anywhere beyond 0. It just goes snap straight back to 0. So even though the measurement points, if I just show you the stick analyzer results, we have registered 3,421 data points with a resolution of 2,992 compared to the Tarantula Pro, which is this one here. We only have data points of 900 and a resolution of 839. So to me, the Tarantula Pro sticks feel more instantly reactive because that processing or filtering isn't being applied to sticks on bounce back. So it just has that more of a raw input. Now, both sticks on both controllers are already set to non-circular mode, and I'll show you that in the GameSir Nexus software in a moment. So they're both effectively, I would have expected them to be the same, pulling the same results, but the Tarantula Pro is obviously older TMR stick tech from GameSir, and that is registering lower resolution points, but it feels faster in quick movements because of that lack of filtering or processing. The linearity and the tremors, they all track similarly anyway. These are results that I exactly expect, so there's no sort of strict filtering going on here. It is natural in that sense, but on quick movements and bounce backs, it is just has that filtering on that you cannot disable, unfortunately. But between the two controllers, 1000 Hertz is perfectly fine. The error rate is really low anyway. Step resolution is really low, it's below 0%. It is just that resolution. So what that resolution means is when you're doing finite, precise movements, you will probably be able to aim with better precision than the Tarantula Pro on this one, whilst the stick's movements will feel smoother as well. but the reaction time for the stick movement will be quicker on the Tarantula Pro because, as I say, there's no stick processing or filtering going on. So it's just worth keeping that in mind. Some people may prefer one over the other. I've actually grown to like this more than the Tarantula Pro now, just because of the way I can track finite movements to a better degree of precision than on the Tarantula Pro. And from what I understand from chatter on Reddit earlier today, there is a Tarantula Pro 2 in the works, which will fix the stick resolution and some of the latency issues that some measurements online have shown. So Nexus software can be found via the Microsoft Store on Windows, and the GameSir website does link to it as well, so it just takes you straight to the store. I've got it pinned on my start menu, so it's going to load it up. And immediately, which is obvious, is an issue that I didn't like with Nexus when I tried it last time around, which is with one of the Cyclone controllers, if I remember right. It might be another model actually. Anyway, when you first launch Nexus, it won't connect to the controller, it won't detect it either. You have to first, even though it's paired to the wireless, whether it's wired or not, it doesn't really matter either, it's the same process. You have to either press a button or just wiggle the sticks. It then puts the controller into app mode. Now app mode is what GameSir uses to detect the controller, and then the controller loads up and shows you what's what. So let's just pan the camera up a little bit more. There we go. So you've got the same look as GameSir Connect software, which is what the Tarantula Pro uses. Now this is another annoyance of mine with GameSir, in that for some controllers you've got to use the Nexus software, for other controllers you've got to use the GameSir Connect software. So having all these different app versions and simultaneous installs to faff around with different controllers each time is kind of tedious at times. So that's my annoyance. The other annoyance is, unless you use the app, then by default the G7 Pro will default to 500 Hz, not 1000 Hz. You have to first launch the app and then go to here and then toggle 1000 Hz on. So it's just worth keeping that in mind, that out of the box it will only be 500 Hz. Also, if you're using headsets, then whether you're on 500 Hz, 1000 Hz or not, it doesn't matter, it will always go back to 500 Hz. So maybe that's why, because they test this at the factory by plugging in a headset, I guess, so that then defaults the controller to 500 Hz. It'd be nice to have 1000 Hz out of the box until you need to, but as it's an Xbox licensed controller, I guess a lot of people will probably be using this for a console as well. So it kind of makes sense, I suppose. Whether you get 500 Hz through a console or not, I don't know. Maybe, who knows? I don't have an Xbox, so I can't really test that. I don't actually know if you can test polling rates on consoles anyway, but yeah, that's what it is in terms of the polling rate. So if we go to sticks, here is where you can set the circle mode or the raw sensor mode, the square mode of the sensor, and then you can do a quick test to make sure everything's working okay. The default inner dead zone is set to 10%, but I prefer 5% just because very gentle movements, even just nudging it slightly, actuates the stick, but you don't get idle drift regardless. So even if I shake the controller around at 5%, there is no drift being registered on either stick. Drop it below 5% and at times it can show idle drift. Now some people I know at 0 dead zone, they do like that idle drift because it activates auto aim on some games. So it's a preference thing, and you've got 4 profiles as well. So if you go back to the home screen, you've got 4 profiles you can actuate, 4 different levels of, say, stick dead zones or trigger dead zones. So that's really cool. So if I go back into sticks and just continue on with that, outer dead zones is set to 100% anyway, so that's fine. It's just the inner that you want to lower slightly, not too much, just enough. And I found, as I say, 5% for both sticks is more than enough to register very, very delicate movements on the right stick there. So you can see barely moving the stick, just touching it, and it registers. So 5% is more than enough. And I haven't changed anything else. You can play around with these if you want to. These are all preferential. In the buttons tab, this is where you can customize all the buttons. Now you can remap buttons on the fly on the controller by using the M button here, by holding it. But you can only remap buttons to existing buttons this way. If you use the GameSir Nexus app, you can go in, for example, L5, which is this one up here. I've remapped it to keyboard key 3. just because that's what I use for my stats overlays. So in games when I want to show an overlay or hide it, press 3 and that's it. The other one, L5 or R5, sorry, is my RTSS screenshot button. So RivaTuner Statistics Server, I use that quite often in games. So quick screenshot there, because I have found that sometimes the screenshot button on the controller doesn't always work. I don't think there's actually one here. Maybe there is. As I say, I'm not a console gamer, so I'm not quite sure how these work all the time, because they don't always work on PC, but they do on console. So yeah, you just click on the button that you want to remap. For example, we're going to use R5 here, and then you've got your tabs across the top to set it to a mouse button, for example, a keyboard button, or a numeric keypad button, or a button on the controller, which is an existing button. So I've got it mapped to Keyboard Plus, which is my RTSS screenshot button when I'm playing PC games with mouse and keyboard. So I can just replicate that on here with a quick press. So that's all cool. And it's really easy as that. You don't need to click apply or anything like that. It's just as soon as you make a change, it saves it straight away to the controller, and that's it. You don't need to have Nexus running in the background either. So you can just use this on another PC and your same mappings will track across to that PC as well, because everything's on board across those 4 profiles. Under motion, you can activate motion for PC as well. I don't use motion in any game, so I've not really played around with customizing this because I just don't need to, but it works on PC just fine. And it's a 6-axis gyro that you have on this as well. The triggers, the dead zone by default, if I remember right, is set to 5%. So I've loaded to 2%. And again, just because the triggers are very sensitive, I like having a very finite trigger. So 1% being registered there, as you can see, just barely pushing the trigger in. And it's really easy to actuate as well, very linear, because I've got that straight line by default, but you can customize the curve how you see fit as well. So for example, if I wanted that one, it's very slow to begin with, then it ramps up the higher I go. So maybe that's useful for some games or some preferences, but I like the linear one. It just works for me. Under vibrations, you can customize the 4 vibration motors, and then when you toggle these on, you can test them out as well. So as I mentioned, the grip motors are very good. They're not HD rumble, but they're just standard motors, but they have a lot of feedback to them, so I quite like those. I just don't like the motors in the triggers. So let me turn off the grip motor testing, and I'll put the microphone near the, I'll put the triggers near the microphone so you can hear what they sound like. Here we go. So as I say, it sounds like a bee, which I'm not a fan of, and it becomes annoying after a while as well, having them on there. Kind of vibrates your index finger and it just feels odd. So I just leave those off. If a game supports it, then fine, but by default, it's there should you need to, should you want to use them. And that is basically the GameSir Nexus software. It's not too complicated at all. It's really easy to use, and it saves all the settings straight away as soon as you make a change. You can always test the firmware updates and things as well by clicking this button up here. I did get an update when I plugged this in first time this morning for both the wireless receiver and for the controller. Now, by default, you're only going to be checking the firmware for the receiver, not the controller when you're connected wirelessly. In order to check for the controller's firmware, you need to plug in a USB cable and then run GameSir Nexus software. So that is the only way to update the controller's firmware itself. So be wary of that. If you see a firmware update for that receiver, you're not necessarily updating the firmware on the controller, so you'll need to check that as well. And that is it. So yeah, this is a really good controller, and I've had no problems at all with playing games with it. So what I'm going to do is, for the last few minutes of this video, I'm going to play some Still Wakes the Deep, just so you can see what that is like. And I'm going to turn the lights down.
Okay. Just gotta get to that container.